Hello everyone and welcome to our second video. This one is on Texas Medicaid Waiver Programs. I hope that y'all find this especially helpful because I know that this is a topic that a lot of families don't know a lot about right when their child is born. These are very valuable programs and everyone listening will at least qualify for a couple of the programs if they have a child with Down syndrome. So I hope that this is helpful to you. I hope it is informative. Once again, my name is Lydia. I'm an occupational therapy student at Baylor University in the Robbins College of Health and Human Sciences. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's talk about what Texas Medicaid waivers actually are. It can be a confusing topic. Parents might just be told, hey, make sure your kid's on the list, and they might not even know what list people are talking about or if their child is truly eligible. So let's break it down a little bit. Basically, these waivers are a way for children and adults with disabilities to receive the services that they need. It allows states to use Medicaid funds, but also to waive certain Medicaid requirements, mainly family income, in order to get the services. So, as I mentioned, everyone is eligible in some way for at least one of these programs because income of the family is not going to be a factor that's considered. So if that's been holding you back from putting your child on the list, don't let it because you qualify for at least something that we're going to talk about today. Prior to this, individuals could not live in the community to get coverage for these services. So now we're seeing a lot of adults and children that are able to live in their family home, maybe live on their own, and they still get access to the services that are able to enhance their life, which is awesome. There are 7 waiver programs that exist in Texas, and each has their own interest list. You might hear these also referred to as wait lists, but basically you're going to put your name on there, and when you get to the top, the opportunity will be presented to you to receive these services. So here are all 7 of the Texas waiver programs that exist. It is highly unlikely that your child is going to qualify for all of them. The ones that you see bolded are specifically designed for those with intellectual disability. The other 3 have a little bit different criteria. Someone would have to meet the criteria for admission into a nursing facility or an inpatient facility in order to receive those services, so that might not apply to everyone. The 4 that you see, again, specifically for intellectual disability. Although deaf-blind with multiple disabilities, the first one that you see bolded, the child would have to be deaf-blind, so not everyone is going to qualify for that one either. But we'll talk about these individually, and let's jump into that. So I do want to make the distinction that some of these programs are managed by the state, and then others are managed by local authority. So the ones that are state-managed include deaf-blind multiple disabilities, Community Living Assistance and Support Services, or CLASS, and then the Medically Dependent Children Program. All of those have the same phone number that you can call to get information about them or to put your child on the list, whereas Home and Community-Based Services, Texas Home Living, and the Youth Empowerment Services programs are going to be managed by your local authority, which varies on where you live. So the local authority is called the Local Intellectual and Developmental Disability Authority, or your LIDA. So you would have to contact your LIDA to get information on those 3 programs, which we'll talk about your LIDA on the next slide. So as I previously mentioned, LIDA stands for your Local Intellectual and Developmental Disability Authority. And this is basically the point of entry for those publicly funded intellectual and developmental disability programs. So this is going to be who you're going to contact for those waivers that are locally managed, like HCS and Texas Home Living. I've tried to put a few of the most popular counties for the Houston general area on here, but if you don't see yours listed here, there is a link that you can use to find your LIDA. But if you're in Harris County, yours is going to be the Harris Center. If you're in Fort Bend County, Texana Center. For Brazoria and Galveston, Gulf Coast Center. And then for Montgomery, Walker, and Liberty counties, it's going to be Tri-County Behavioral Health Care. And that bullet on the very bottom right there is where you can find your LIDA. Again, if it's not here, you can go on the Texas Health and Human Services website, and they have where you can just type in your county or your zip code, and they'll pull up who your local authority is. Okay, so now we're going to dive into talking about each one individually, and we're going to start with the STAR Plus Home and Community-Based Services Program, or HCBS. This program is specifically for adults over the age of 21, and its purpose is so that they can receive services in their community instead of in a nursing facility. So this is specifically for adults that are at risk of being admitted into a nursing facility, and you'd have to meet that criteria in order to qualify. So that's not going to be everyone, but if your child is approaching 21 or you think they might qualify for this, it's worth looking into. I also want to note that this one has its own phone number. It was not listed on the slide that had the state managed versus the local authority managed. So this one is going to have its own number if you're interested. Next, we have the Youth Empowerment Services Waiver, which provides services to children from ages 3 to 18 that would otherwise need inpatient psychiatric care. So those at risk of being moved out of their home due to their mental health needs. So this is for serious mental, emotional, and behavioral issues. This normally has a short wait list. So if your loved one or someone that you know could benefit from this program, it might be worth looking into because the wait is normally pretty short. But for this one, you will want to contact your local mental health authority, which is likely going to be the same as your LIDA, the Harris Center, Tri-County, Texana Center, those places that were on the previous slide. But again, if yours is not listed, you can look online with the link that I'll have at the end to see who your local mental health authority is. Then we have Deaf Blind with Multiple Disabilities, or DBMD. This one provides services to people of all ages that are deaf-blind or may have a related condition that leads to deaf blindness and also an additional disability. So this is one of those that includes intellectual disability, but of course not everyone is going to qualify, as participants do have to be deaf-blind. But the number is there should you know someone that could qualify, and this is a program that is state managed. The next one that we have here is the Medically Dependent Children Program. This is for children and adults under 21, and they have to be considered medically fragile and otherwise would need services in a nursing facility. So again, this is to keep them out of a nursing facility and to receive those services from home. This is, again, probably not going to apply to everyone, but extremely helpful for those that do qualify. And again, this is a state-run program, so the state number is the number that is listed there. So next up we have CLASS, and this is one that you're going to want to make note of because every individual with Down syndrome is going to be eligible for this program. CLASS stands for Community Living Assistance and Support Services. This program provides home-based and community-based support to children and adults of all ages with a related condition, which Down syndrome is considered a related condition. The condition must have started before the individual was 22 years old, which of course when we're talking about Down syndrome is always going to be applicable. And this one is state managed, so I put the state phone number on here. Once again, take note of this one because your child should qualify. So this is another one that nearly everyone should qualify for, and that is Home and Community-Based Services, or HCS. This provides services to children and adults of all ages with intellectual disability or related conditions that live with their families, on their own, or in a group home with less than 4 people. Again, this one is managed by your LIDA, so definitely look to that local authority for how to get on that list. But something important to note about this one is that they have something called an HCS crisis diversion waiver, where if you ever find yourself in a crisis type situation, say you or your spouse becomes disabled and there are significant barriers to caring for your child, you can request this diversion waiver and they will get you the help that you need. Every Child and the ARC of Texas are 2 other organizations that can really help you access that should you ever need it. And I'll have their information at the end of this presentation as well, along with some other resources. Next, we have Texas Home Living, which is another one that a lot of people are going to qualify for. It's for children and adults, so all ages with intellectual disability or a related condition, and they must live in either their family's home or in their own home. This is the only program that considers parent income. However, it's still worth it to put your child's name on the list. It can't hurt anything. And this one is also managed by local authority. So now that we've kind of talked through the different waivers, I did want to compile a list of the different services that your child might receive through the programs. It is important to note that not all of these services are going to be available with every single program, but I did look mainly at the ones that individuals with Down syndrome would qualify for, and I tried to pick the most popular and relevant ones that they would offer. So this would include things like behavioral support services, day habilitation programs, which I want to emphasize can be really important after your child has graduated from school. It keeps them with other peers their age, it keeps them learning, and it just keeps them involved in the community. There's also going to be dietary services, employment assistance, OT, PT, speech, all those therapies that your child could still benefit from, supported employment, really just a lot of opportunities for them to get some really good care that can be beneficial. So let's talk eligibility. As we saw, most of these programs are going to be available to all ages, but there are some exceptions. Some are only for children, etc. So you're just going to want to keep that in mind as you think about which ones you would like your child to be eligible for. Also, the individual with the disability is going to have to be Medicaid eligible. Some specify that they need to be able to receive Medicaid services prior to enrolling in the program. It is important to note that, again, the point of these waivers is that they're not going to consider family income. So this is about the individual only. For 2022, this financial eligibility works itself out to be they have to have an income less than $2,523 a month, and they can have no more than $2,000 in assets. So you're really going to want to keep it under that $2,000 amount as far as the money that they have to their name. As far as functional eligibility, it's going to vary a little bit between programs, obviously, but typically it's a diagnosis and a designated level of what they call adaptive behavior deficits. But it is important to note that the individual is only going to have to fulfill eligibility criteria once their name has moved to the top of an interest list. So when you're putting your child's name on the list, you should not need to answer any questions about their functional eligibility. Again, as their name moves up on the list, that's when they're going to take a look at them and determine that they are eligible for the services. So you should be able to put your name on any list and no one should give you any problems about it. So we've kind of glossed over this a little bit, but we're going to talk about specifically how to get on any interest list that you want. So you're going to want to call the appropriate authority for each waiver list that you want to put your child's name on. And this is either by contacting the state with that 877 number that I put earlier in the video, or by contacting your local authority, your LIDA, again, according to where you live. It is recommended that you add your child to any list that you want as early as possible rather than later, just to improve the likelihood that their name actually reaches the top of the list. A lot of these programs that a lot of people qualify for have super long lists, some with like a 15-year wait. As of this year, one of the lists is barely getting to 2009, so it's definitely something that you don't want to wait for. And it's important to note that services can always be declined once your child reaches the top of the list. If you decide that it's not something you're interested in, you can totally decline it. That's not an issue. Just be aware that their name does go back to the bottom of the list. It's not something that you can kind of hold off on for just a little bit. You either have to take it or not. But in my opinion, it's better to be safe than sorry and just put their name on the list, even if maybe that's not something that you'll end up using. Okay, so now that we know how to actually get on the list by calling the appropriate authority, we're going to talk about just some tips and tricks to kind of help you out through this process. Number one is add your child to as many lists as possible. If you think they might qualify, if you think you might want access to the services, put their name on there. Again, no harm is done if you end up not needing the services. They're just going to give the opportunity to the next person. Number two, for your records, ask for either an email confirmation or a mail letter once your child's name is on a list. This is just for your records to keep in a safe place and to know that you have that in writing somewhere. You can also keep your address and phone numbers updated. It's in your best interest to do that because if you can't be reached when your child reaches the top of the list, their name is going to get dropped. You might also want to consider calling around your child's birthday every year just to make sure that they have your updated information and you can actually check their spot on the list and keep track of that spot over the years just to see how fast or slowly the list is moving. Another thing that's important to note is that a child or an adult can remain on an interest list while they're receiving services from another waiver program. They just can't receive services from two programs at the same time. So again, if they're already receiving services through one, they can still stay on the list, just not two at the same time. And then Also, something to note is that a lot of waiver programs offer a consumer-directed services option. It's basically just an option to manage your child's care, and a lot of parents prefer this because it gives them more control over their child's services and how they're being delivered and who's delivering them. So something else that I wanted to mention that is not a waiver program, but that overlaps maybe a little bit with them, so I still wanted to include it in case you're interested. It's a program called Community First Choice, and it's an entitlement service. So meaning that if you're eligible, you are entitled to receiving these services. So there's not a wait list per se. It's more so if you are eligible, then you should be able to receive these services when you need them. This is more focused on attendant and habilitation services, meaning it's more about community support, teaching individuals to care for themselves, helping them complete tasks around the home, helping them learn how to manage their money, manage their medications, navigate the community, really anything that would help them be more independent. That is what skills this is going to focus on. In terms of eligibility, they would still have to be Medicaid eligible, and they would need help with their daily activities, and they would also meet an institutional level of care, which is the same eligibility for the intellectual disability waivers that we talked about. So there should not be any additional eligibility requirements other than what was already required for the waivers. And again, it's focused on helping the individual learn how to care for themselves. And in terms of its overlap with the waiver services, they are available to receive these regardless of whether they are receiving waiver services. And of course, being on the interest list does not interfere with that either. So it really doesn't affect their ability to participate in waiver programs, which is awesome. It's also managed by your local authority. So if you're interested in this, definitely reach out to them. And again, it might be more accessible than waiver programs due to its lack of interest list, so I just wanted to bring some attention to it. Okay, so just to review a little bit, the Texas Medicaid Waiver Programs that are designed for individuals with intellectual disability are CLASS, deaf-blind with multiple disabilities, home and community-based services, and then Texas Home Living. It's important to note that CLASS, home and community-based services, and Texas Home Living are the ones that pretty much everyone should qualify for. Again, if you think your child qualifies for some of the other ones that we talked about, definitely put their name on the interest list. It can do no harm. And remember, they don't have to show that they're eligible until their name is at the top. So that kind of leads into the next point. Put your child's name on as many and any interest lists as you'd like. And again, the earlier, the better. And then again, some of them are state managed, some of them are managed by local authorities. So just be aware of that. If it's going to be CLASS, DBMD, or MDCP, so many letters, then you can call the state. And then for the other ones, you're going to want to contact your local authority. Okay, here I've just included some resources that I think could be helpful to you all. We have the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. Of course, they're going to have so much information on all of this stuff. A little bit of fair warning, it can be a bit overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff on there, but what I would recommend the most is the waiver program webpage that just outlines everything. And then also they have this really awesome waiver program comparison chart where it really just lays it out there, what the different programs are, how they compare to each other if you want some more clarity on that. I also have the link right there to locate your local authority. If you're still not sure who that is based on your county, you can use that link to help find who you need to contact. I've also put the Down Syndrome Association of Houston on here if you want more information about resources or just any more information on this topic or other topics. Of course, we are always here to help you guys, and feel free to email us at any point. I also have Consolidated Planning Group, their YouTube channel. They are actually a Houston area financial planning entity, and they specialize in special needs planning, which is really cool. And they have so many great YouTube videos that just talk about benefits and planning for your child, and it's really awesome. So definitely check them out if you haven't already. And then I also have just links to Every Child in the Arc of Texas. That are the two organizations that I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the crisis diversion waiver. They are really awesome organizations that exist here in Texas, so check those out as well. So we have made it to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Should you have any questions, please feel free to email the Down Syndrome Association of Houston or myself if it's something specific to this presentation. I am here to help in any way I can. If there's anything I can do for you, feel free to shoot me an email. And again, thank you so much for watching.